So what happened to Jimmy Kimmel actually does matter. And I want to say that. I want to be very clear about this. What happened to Jimmy Kimmel matters. Now, I'm not a big Jimmy Kimmel fan. I haven't found him to be all that funny, but that's neither here nor there. What actually happened is something that we all need to be paying attention to. ABC suspends Jimmy Kimmel's show after a remark on Trump supporters. The broadcast of Jimmy Kimmel Live has been halted indefinitely, the channel's press office announced. But it wasn't just that he made a comment and the station pulled the plug. There's more to it than that. Here's Donald Trump, currently on a state visit to Britain, reacting positively to the decision. What? Here's the actual Truth Social post. Great news for America. The ratings challenge Jimmy Kimmel show is canceled. You're a sitting president. Why are you worried about that? Congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. Kimmel has zero talent and worse ratings than even Colbert, if that's possible. That leaves Jimmy and Seth and two total losers on fake news NBC. Their ratings are also horrible. Do it, NBC. President Donald J. Trump. But again, we have real conflicts in the world where real people are dying, and Trump's worried about that. Okay, well, so what was so offensive that Jimmy Kimmel said? Let's listen to this spot here. It's not terribly offensive to my mind, but just hear what he had to say.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing
Okay, so let's stop there. That is open and debatable, okay, but it's not egregious, he's not calling for death threats or anything.
Everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition.
Okay, so he took a pot shot at the president, but that alone shouldn't be enough to have him fired, I don't think. I mean, I remember Leno and Letterman and all kinds of late night hosts taking shots at the president. That's what these guys do. Okay, well, here's the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, nails why Jimmy Kimmel's reckless comments on Charlie Kirk's death are unacceptable. Quote, broadcasters are different from any other form of communication. That is, it's on ABC, NBC, where there's over-the-air TV, not cable news. This is, they say they have an obligation to the public. Okay, Fox News doesn't have an FCC license. CNN doesn't. But ABC, CBS, NBC, these broadcast stations do. Okay, so there's something different about that, he says. And with that license comes a unique obligation to operate in the public interest. Okay, that's fair so far. President Trump ran directly at these legacy broadcast outlets and exposed them to market forces. And a lot of these affiliate groups said, we are tired of carrying this stuff. There's more work to do. But I'm very glad to see that American broadcasters are standing up to serve the interests of their communities. Okay, there's more work to do. They stand up to them, and they got rid of Jimmy Kimmel, and there's more work to do. So it sounds like almost a bit of a veiled threat. Okay, if that's what's happening, it's absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. No question about it. And I'm not going to say that's not what's happening. That's not where I'm going next, if you're wondering. Okay, so let's look at this then. So the FCC chairman threatens to take action against ABC over Kimmel's comments. A few hours later, his show gets suspended indefinitely. This is a clear violation of the First Amendment. If this happened under a Democrat, your hair would be on fire. Now, there's a couple things here. It didn't quite happen like that, but essentially that's it. And if this happened under a Democrat to a Republican who was on the same thing, yeah, Republicans would be going just crazy, just like Democrats are going crazy over this, as rightly they should be. Okay, so here's what happened. Nexstar Media, one of the largest operators of TV stations, of broadcast TV stations, announced today that its ABC affiliates won't run Kimmel's show for the foreseeable future. So after that veiled threat, they pull the plug on him. Nexstar is trying to push. Here's why. This is why. Nexstar is trying to push for a $6.2 billion merger through FCC scrutiny. So that means that they don't want to get on the bad side of the FCC. And so, yeah, ABC announced that they'd pull Kimmel indefinitely shortly thereafter. Here's what you need to pay attention to. Having just announced a deal to acquire Tegna, one of its biggest rivals, for $6.2 billion, the deal is sure to receive scrutiny from the Trump administration, particularly the FCC, which has in recent months put media mergers under a microscope. And so Kimmel just happened to be a pawn in this game between these two, between the broadcasters and the FCC. The original plan, then, was for Kimmel to address the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr's reaction to the late-night host comments on the air. Like, he was actually going to say more. He was going to double down on the air on Wednesday night, but when ABC execs got wind of what he was going to do, they pulled Kimball's show indefinitely. So it wasn't that the FCC fired him, but indirectly caused what's going to happen. Okay. So after the conversation between Kimmel and Walden, she and other senior executives thought that the Star's approach could make the situation worse, and they didn't want to jeopardize that business deal. So that's the real picture of what was happening. Now, Stephen Colbert talks about it like this: the chairman of the FCC, who has the power over ABC's broadcast licenses, but not Colbert's on cable news, right? So he can talk more freely. Sounds like he's telling them to punish Kimmel or else. It feels to me like shutting down this type of speech would represent a serious threat to our freedoms. Okay, let's listen to what Colbert had to say.
The Federal Communications Commission, who has the power over ABC's broadcast licenses, sounds like he's telling them to punish Kimmel or else.
It sounds like a veiled threat. It really does sound like, you know, hey, more needs to be done here.
It feels to me like shutting down this type of speech would represent a serious threat to our freedoms. And you know who else thinks that?
Hold on. Before we get to that, let's all just agree that if this shouldn't be happening, that the government shouldn't be doing this to pretty much anyone. I mean, unless they're like a criminal or something like that. But if they just don't agree with your political position, we shouldn't be, one side shouldn't be going after the other for that reason. Everybody okay with that? Is that fair? Okay.
Brendan Carr in 2020, when he tweeted, "From internet memes to late-night comedians, political satire helps hold those in power accountable. Shutting down this type of political speech, especially at the urging of those targeted or threatened by its message, would represent a serious threat to our freedoms." Oh man, do not tell Brendan Carr that Brendan Carr said that, or he's going to get Brendan Carr to cancel Brendan Carr.
Okay, so that's funny, but yeah, he was right in the tweets. Maybe it's not so right now. Here's Trump again. Jimmy Kimmel, just before the announcement of the best picture of the year, felt that he had to respond to a truth put out by me toward the end of the show. He made a total fool of himself and his wife and his agent, begging him not to do it, while also again, Trump, why are you paying attention to this? You know, people are dying overseas because of bad things going on in the world. Like, let's just do something about that. Okay, Michael McFaul, who I quote fairly regularly because he's a former American ambassador to Russia, said, "To my conservative colleagues who have spoken out in defense of the First Amendment today in response to government's use of power to stifle free speech, bravo. To my conservative colleagues who have not criticized the government's use of its power to stifle free speech today, your silence is noted." Now, he can say that, and he can say that precisely because on September 10th, he said this: "Such a tragic day in American history. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk." Now, if he was saying one but not the other, then, you know, he's open to criticism. But if he's being consistent and calling out, like, look, with Charlie Kirk, nobody wants to see political assassinations because we don't agree with somebody's speech, right? Same thing. We don't want the government to be doing this to Jimmy Kimmel. Now, I'm surprised that Jimmy Kimmel, this is actually Jimmy Kimmel's TV show. I'm surprised he wasn't deplatformed already because of things he was doing by the left with cancel culture and that sort of thing. But yeah, but cancel culture is back and it's sad. Now, there's cancel culture from the left and then there's MAGA doing this from the right. I think that's a very fair argument. Jake Bro posted this: "Cancel culture is woke. Trump and MAGA have brought back wokeness bigger and better than ever with their cancel culture spree." Now, this is not saying they philosophically believe the same thing. They're kind of diametrically opposed, but they're using the same bad ideas, trying to shout people down or deplatform them rather than deal with the arguments as they should be. Now, here's J.D. Vance talking about this back in February.
Government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth. So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that.
That's the right answer, but it doesn't look like that was the case. And again, it wasn't a direct thing. It was indirect, but it was still a threat. And that's pretty bad.
In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town. And under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
That's what you should be saying, and that's what you should be doing. Now, here's Barack Obama. After years of complaining about cancel culture, the current administration has taken it to a new and dangerous level by routinely threatening regulatory action against media companies unless they muzzle or fire reporters, commentators that it doesn't like. That's fair. They shouldn't be doing that. But, you know, under the Biden administration, we saw things like this. New report shows 70% of Biden administration's education enforcement targeted Christian and career colleges. Look, I teach at a Christian college. We've had these conversations about, like, what if our school loans get pulled by the federal government? Like, we could be in real trouble because our students still depend on that, just like other students do. And so it was the same kind of threat. So I don't want that kind of threat, nor do I want the Jimmy Kimmel kind of threat. Here's another from the Wall Street Journal about Biden's regulators gang up on a Christian college. It's the same stuff. It's the threat. Okay, now, this all was predicated on what happened to Charlie Kirk, and nobody should be in the pro-assassination crowd, and people should have been respectful that somebody's life is now extinguished, that somebody is, a father is no longer in the home, the wife is a widow, that sort of thing. Why did the alleged assassin target Kirk? Evidence paints a complicated picture, says NPR. Well, then you saw on social media, apparently this educated white Christian son of a sheriff, Tyler Robinson, was groomed in all the ways MAGA likes. Okay, like, I'm not trying to get into that kind of thing. Here's Piers Morgan giving his statement about it. Charlie Kirk's assassin, Tyler Robinson, 22, killed him because he hated his opinions and thought he was a fascist. Yet ironically, that's Robinson, was the fascist, killing someone to silence their opposing views. The woke left loves to say speech is violent. No, it's not. Violence is violence. So is it the right? Is he from the right? Is he from the left? That's immaterial. The whole issue is he did something because he was motivated in some way. Because of the use of free speech, he wanted to silence that, and we should all be opposed to that, just like we should all be opposed to what was going on with the FCC threatening this comedian. Okay. Megyn Kelly posted this, and I just want you to hear this. I don't know if you've seen this. Maybe you're on the other side of the political spectrum. Megyn Kelly is on the right side of the political spectrum. I'm not sure who needs to hear this, but Jimmy Kimmel got on the air and falsely stated as a fact that Charlie Kirk's killer was MAGA, smearing an entire movement and Trump in particular with a vile, disgusting lie. Frankly, I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was just a basic political joke, but I understand how people over here, particularly those that are closest to Kirk, understand feel it differently. They just don't. I mean, this is a very intense emotion right now. Entire movement, and Trump in particular, with a vile, disgusting lie at a time when the threat against those on the right is at an all-time high. Now, if they feel embattled, that's part of the problem here as well, because they're feeling like, hey, this could happen to someone else or me. This was after we knew from Utah governor that the killer had been indoctrinated into left-wing ideology, after we seen the shooter's bullet casings reflecting furry trans memes. His boyfriend is a trans, I don't know which way they go, person going from one gender to another, but I don't remember exactly how to describe that. Calling Charlie a fascist and anti-fascist lyrics. It was after we had learned that the shooter was living with his trans furry boyfriend and believed Charlie Kirk was full of hate, right? Okay. Now, This was an intentional lie to gin up hatred toward the very group of people most suffering in the wake of our devastating loss of Charlie, and Kimmel did it willfully, even gleefully, cheering complicit audience. Any employer and media would see how depraved and sick this is. Okay, now if the employer sees how depraved and sick this is, and it kind of is to mock that, right? I mean, you could probably find there's plenty of things but let's say if the employer did this and the employer was just moved by, there was a bunch of mail coming in saying, this is really out of bounds. I'm not going to watch this anymore. Okay, that's one thing. But if the government is kind of an veiled threat saying you better do this or else, that's a whole different thing. What the left doesn't seem to understand and needs to hear is that MAGA has blanking had it. We are angry. We are incensed, literally getting some of our friends killed, not to mention our president shot, nearly assassinated. I have zero doubt ABC was overwhelmed with absolutely furious calls, comments, emails from the truly fed up viewers and knew he had crossed a deadly serious line. Okay, so if it was just ABC, that's one thing, but that's not the point here. So as much as I want you to understand how people on the right are experiencing the thing with Kirk, and he said that, it's not just that. It's more that. And look, Kirk said all kinds, like, my channel is mostly about the war in Ukraine and what Russia's doing and that sort of thing. That's the primary thing here. And Kirk, these are all tweets that Kirk has said about anti-Ukraine. So I'm not like sticking up for him because of that. I'm saying nobody should die for free speech or because of what they say. Right. So but they're trying to capitalize on this in social media. Like, this is Lord Bebo, a connected to Russia propaganda site. Tyler Robinson's uncle works with Azov, the Ukrainian military, trying to make that kind of connection. Or this pro-Kremlin propagandists are now desperately trying to link Tyler Robinson to Ukraine. So it's, again, in social media, which is it just inflames things. You don't get to something like, this is Jackson Hinkle, who's never seen the wrong side of the equation that he hasn't liked. You don't get the 3.6 million followers in a year by being civil, right? And that's really the point. We need civility. Okay, we all should be reading Os Guinness's book, The Case for Civility, right? Now, here's Ben Shapiro reacting to this, and I think he takes just the right tone. Ben Shapiro, if you don't know, is on the right-hand side of the political spectrum.
Jimmy Kimmel is, in fact, a schmuck who should have been taken off the air 10 years ago.
Okay, stop. Jimmy Kimmel is a schmuck who should be taken off the air 10 years ago. But he goes on and qualifies that.
I do not want the FCC in the business of telling local affiliates that their licenses will be removed if they broadcast material that the FCC deems to be informationally false. Why?
That's right. So because if you can do it, then you can do it. And it's going to just be absolutely awful if we get into one administration coming into power and then doing it to the other side, and then another administration coming into power and then doing it to the other side.
Because one day the shoe will be on the other foot.
That's
I know
right.
that we've gotten out of the habit of this. I know that there are a lot of people on the right who say the shoe will never be on the other foot. And if it is, the left will just do it anyway. Here is the thing. Preemptively breaking things because you believe that the left is going to break the things makes the things broken, and you can't unbreak the things. So I'm an advocate of the idea that things that are not yet broken probably should not be. And if we are now in a world where we're going to preemptively break the plate because we believe that the bad guy is going to break the plate, all the plates are going to get broken. And regardless of what you do, that's going to get used against you. The shards will be used as weapons against you. I promise you, if the FCC is removing local affiliate licenses or threatening to do so based on Jimmy Kimmel being a jackass, the next time a Democrat is elected, which will happen, this country is split 50-50, pretending that this country is...
So it's going to happen to both sides. Don't do that. The government shouldn't be using its power in that way. Here's Professor Tim Wilson from the UK talking about it.
On our side of the Atlantic, the Kimmel affair looks like a specifically American row about licenses and late-night TV. It's not. It's a case study in how governments, regulators, and large media platforms can chill lawful speech without ever issuing a formal ban.
That's right. They can chill lawful speech without putting out a ban. And if that's what's happening, which it looks like that's what's happening, we don't want any part of that. So we should all be, even if you don't care about Jimmy Kimmel. I don't care about Jimmy Kimmel, but I do care about the principle that the government shouldn't be doing this, and we should all care about that. Here's even Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz. You don't get much more conservative than this. Rips the FCC chair's Jimmy Kimmel threat as unbelievably dangerous. I think it's unbelievably dangerous for government to put itself in the position of saying that we're going to decide what speech we like and what we don't, and we're going to threaten to take you off the air if we don't like what you're saying. I like Brendan Carr. He's a very good guy. He's chairman of the FCC, and I work closely with him. But what he said here is dangerous as, and I'm quoting, is dangerous as hell. It might feel good right now to threaten Jimmy Kimmel. Yeah, but when it's used to silence every conservative in America, we will regret it, Cruz said. So it's the same thing. When the shoe's on the other foot, you're not going to like it. So we need to think in terms of, what if we were behind a Rawlsian veil of ignorance? John Rawls was a philosopher. I'm not a big fan of Rawls, but the idea is actually pretty good. If you just heard what happened and you didn't know who was the president and whose the administration it was, and all you knew was that a political administration, a presidential administration's FCC chair, was threatening the license of the other side because they didn't like the speech, and you didn't know who was in charge, you would say, this is a bad idea, right? Just like you would say with Charlie Kirk, if somebody was a nationally known spokesperson for a particular cause and he was shot, particularly just because somebody didn't like what he had to say, you would say, that's a terrible idea. We should be against it. We should be against both of these things, and we should be consistent about it. Okay, so that's why Jimmy Kimmel's important. Not because he's funny. I don't particularly think he's funny. I mean, I like other comedians better, but that's neither here nor there. But because he's being used by the government in this way, through the threat to the corporation. And that's why this is important. Okay, my friends, if you like what you heard here, I generally talk about Ukraine and Russia, but if this was helpful to you and it helped you think through some things, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button. And if you're not a regular subscriber, please consider subscribing. You can always break up with me later. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. And thank you for caring about big issues that affect all of us.